Well, it sounds to me like you've had a heavenly encounter with the Holy Spirit towards Him convicting you the same way that He's convicted me towards stop doing a lot of that stuff that at one time we was guilty of.
When you get older, your thinking changes.
Your thinking changes and your priorities change, don't they? Your whole concept changes. You know, I'm looking at this river right now. This river, even right now, with all the rain that we've gotten in the past, 2 months, it still is not up like it ought to be, you know it?
It was up real high. It's not come down.
It was up real high this past week or two?
Well,
About a month ago, really?
that island there wasn't out there.
Okay. Well, I've seen it so daggone full, and I'm sure you have too, where you couldn't even get in this parking lot.
Yeah.
So right now it's probably running 15 feet below where it has been on the high level.
It's probably about 7 foot below.
7 foot below where it has been on the high level.
Yeah.
Man, them old boys had a mess this summer, didn't they?
What are you talking about? I've seen the water all the way up that bluff right there.
What bluff?
Bluff come over right there.
Over the bluff?
I've seen it up through the bluff.
Good grief. That's what, another probably 7-8 foot?
Oh no, that was a 500-year flood there.
Well, you know, as radical as the weather has become, it'll go from one extreme to another, won't it?
The Lord's giving us signs all the time.
Is that what's happening?
Sure is.
You think something big's on the horizon?
It ain't far off, brother.
What do you think's fixing to happen?
I'm about ready to go home.
Well, I am too, as far as that goes.
Yeah.
But I'm talking about worldwide, global wide. Do you think something big's going to happen?
It's going to be a bad year economically. There's too much stuff in play. 68% of the American people can't pay their bills on time.
Well, you know, we just got through going through January. I just imagine it's going to be tough, even tougher for a lot of people come February. And it's sure enough going to be tough for people come March, ain't it?
Well, what it is, people, they just spend too much money in the economy right now. Houses, cars, recreational stuff, all that stuff's going to come to a head. Right.
Yeah, but
Houses, cars, all that falls.
right,
It just make the domino effect.
exactly.
Interest rates going up. Economy's based on 4 factors, really,
What's that?
and 3 of them are in trouble.
What's that?
One of them is credit.
Okay,
You know we're in trouble in credit.
right.
The other one's based on the interest rate. It's going up. The poor people ain't gonna be able to afford it.
Right.
And then it's based on housing and automotive.
And what's the third?
Recreation.
What's the third? What's the third? Based upon the blessings of the Heavenly Father?
No, the third's the housing section.
Oh, the housing section.
Yeah.
But don't you think, in conjunction with all that, that if you don't have the blessings of God, you're still basically going to be just like a dog chasing after his tail. You're going to be moving, but in essence, you ain't going to be going nowhere.
It's all in what your mind and soul says.
But you know what I'm saying? And that's exactly what America's been doing now, I guess, for the past... Well, we've noticed it more so since 9/11, which has been 21 years now, towards it going downhill. But it was going downhill before 9/11, you know it?
The American people's addicted to man-made stuff.
Yeah.
And, it all decays. It all ends up straight.
Oh, it all does. It's all temperamental. Every bit of it's temperamental.
As long as you're in the right place and you're not wasting money on man-made stuff, you're going to have plenty of money to eat on and pay your bills.
Some of us is. But you know what? I've done auto body work for about 35 years for a professional purpose to be able to survive. Started out being a farmer. Went from being a farmer to a construction. Went from being a construction to a commercialized construction, and then had a bad accident in '79. Had to realign everything. And my dad done auto body work plus farm, so I picked up the next best trade that I know of. That way I could stay on the ground. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now, what are they hauling right there? Do you know?
He's empty.
Oh, he is.
Yeah, he ain't got nothing on that.
Well, why is he going so slow for if he's empty?
That car's pulling him.
Huh?
That car's pulling him.
Oh, it is.
Yeah. He's got them turbochargers kicked in on that thing.
So if he was going the other way, he'd be flying.
Oh, yeah. He's burning some fuel right now.
He is.
Oh, Lord, yeah. Where are you from?
I'm from down around Hop In, Sidonia, on Highway 89 in between Kenton, Tennessee and Sharon, Tennessee.
Okay.
Over in the Weakley County side. Barely on the Weakley County side.
Okay.
I like to come down here about 3 or 4 times a year just to kind of check things out.
Yeah.
I know this past year, whenever the Mississippi got so low, it was causing people to come out of the woodwork from everywhere
Oh, yeah.
towards coming down here and looking at the water being so low. You know what?
Oh, man, people come in here from all over.
Yeah, there was. A matter of fact, where was that at? It must have been further north from here, up around St. Louis, where they had some sort of a deal where people was walking out to the middle of the island, and they said that hadn't been done like in 100 years or something like that.
Yeah, I know where you talking about up there. I can't think of the name of that. Man, he's hooking that bank, ain't he?
I wonder why.
Yeah.
Like-
Like another bar trying to line up. Yeah.
Yeah, I see it. I see it up there. Did you ever do barge work?
Nah.
You never did?
No.
You just know about it because you live up here?
Well, my best friend lives on the river.
Okay.
I know it. He told me all about it, you know.
It's a pretty tough occupation, way I've been told.
My best friend is an engineer.
Is he?
Boat he works on got two 18,000 horsepower motors on it.
18,000? Are you serious?
Yeah.
That's a lot, ain't it?
Holds 140,000 gallons of fuel.
140,000 gallon of fuel. Burns diesel, right? And he's got 2 of them on a tugboat?
Yeah, 2 of them. Some of them got 3.
Some of them got 3? Are they that size?
Oh, no, they bigger than that.
Bigger.
That's a small river boat right there.
It is.
Yeah, that's a small one. They got some 5 times that big.
Twice that size?
Yeah.
You know, I always thought growing up, I wasn't really all that schooled because I had complications in school, so I had to drop out. But I always thought that the mighty Mississippi was one of the biggest rivers in the world. But since...
He's got 3 motors on that one. See them 3 scoops
Okay.
on top of it there? That's how you tell how many motors there.
Okay, it looks like generators up there on top.
No, that's exhaust off them big motors.
It is.
Yeah.
Looks like something that go up on top of a commercialized building up on top for the air conditioning unit and stuff.
That's the exhaust right there for the engine.
But that's the motors right there.
Yeah, you got 3 of them on there, so it's got 3 motors.
And you're saying it's got how many horses per motor?
That one there's probably got about 12,000. But then that'll be the boat
12,000 per motor.
per motor. That's 36,000 horsepower.
36,000 horsepower. Wow.
That was one of them real big ones. It would have either 18 or 24,000 horsepower.
It would.
Yeah. But that boat would be 5 or 3 times that big.
I heard that they eat good on there. The hands that work there, because they got to stay on the boat for like every 15 days or 30 days or something like that.
My friend, he stays on 27 days and off 27.
Off 27 and on 27. But during the time that they're there, that's their home, right?
Oh yeah, you can't leave that boat. The only way you leave that boat is the hammers pick you up. You can't leave that boat, period. Unless you get hurt on it.
But what I'm saying is the quarters in there is supposed to be pretty decent. The food's supposed to be pretty decent, right?
Oh, all them boats has got real good cooking on them.
They do.
Yeah, if they're not a good cook, they'll let them go. Just know
They will.
in a minute. You know, you take 15 to 20 guys working on that boat for 27 days and they start having to eat slop.
That's right.
They all gonna get grabby.
That's right. They're going to get rowdy, ain't they?
Yeah.
They're going to start complaining. And then next thing you know, they ain't going to be performing like they should. They're going to be...
What they'll do, they'll hop off that boat and go to another one.
They will.
Yeah, and them barge companies don't like to do that. They like to keep the same crew on the same boat. Because they get used to that boat, see, and how everything works, and where everything's located on it, you know.
Right. I'm sure it takes a while to figure it out, to get adjusted to each boat. Each boat be a little different somewhere or another, won't it?
Oh, yeah, it takes 3 or 4 months to get adjusted on them boats.
Yeah.
They got to keep them guys happy while they're out there, you know.
Yeah. I didn't realize that it was so... I knew it was dangerous, but I didn't realize it was so dangerous in the summertime towards how hot that metal gets that they carry all that cargo in.
I talked to Brian on the phone the other day. He was up at Duke. It was snowing in. About 20 degrees, wind blowing about 14 miles an hour, and it was cold. I said, what are you doing? He said, I'm in the engine room. I said, how warm is it in there? He said, 120
120 in the wintertime.
in the engine room, yeah.
In the engine room. So you can only imagine what it'd be like in the summertime, huh?
Oh man, he comes home and he's dehydrated bad.
But what I'm getting at is the metal on the outside with the sun beating down on it, with it being so hot in the dead summertime, some of that metal gets up to about 157, 160 something degrees, and it's just, steadily putting out all that heat. And then, of course, if you have trouble out there on the water and the sun's beating down, that just makes it feel that much more hotter. You know what I'm saying?
Well, about the only time they come out is
if there's a problem.
They take turns every hour.
Tying in and tying out, that's the hard work, ain't it?
Every hour if that boat's running, they have to run a deck check on each one of those winches.
Yeah.
On them barges. Every hour on the hour.
Why is the purpose of that? In case they had a bad leak?
From breaking loose, sometimes they break loose.
Or maybe you got punctured some way or another and it's sinking. You just you hadn't caught it yet.
No, that captain catch that real quick.
He does.
Yeah, they got monitors in all those barges.
They do.
Yeah.
So that stuff's done already become high tech too, huh?
Oh Lord, yeah.
Really? That's probably was helping those tugboat operators whenever the water got so low, towards knowing just exactly where the channel was, where they could go down without bottoming out. You know what?
Well, the river traffic was cut down to 25%. Plus
25%, and their loads, they wasn't loading the loads, but about 2/3, and they wasn't carrying near as much.
Well, a lot of them most time carry anywhere from 25 to 35 barges, just depending on the boat and how big it is. But back then, a big barge wouldn't carry but like 6 barges, 8 barges.
And the reason for that is to keep them up higher. That way
No, they couldn't make the bends in the river.
Is that right?
It was so low.
It was so low. Even with GPS and all that other stuff.
Yeah, the river current. I mean, it wasn't 300 yards wide right here. We could walk on dry land.
I know. You think it's going to happen again this year?
I don't think so. Anything's possible. God only knows. You know, He's in charge of Mother Nature.
Was you keeping up with all the other water systems all over the world last year?
Well, I keep up with the one over in Israel quite a bit.
The River Euphrates?
Well, what they're doing over there now in Israel, they've got the world's largest water purification system in the world. They've taken that water out of the Mediterranean Sea now, and they can produce enough water for their country and 3 or 4 more countries.
Yeah, but it's costing them about $6 or $7 a gallon to do it, ain't it?
I don't know what it's costing them, but they talk about letting other countries tap into it. You know.
Over there in the Middle East,
But
Turkey, Iran, Iraq, all them places.
The trouble is, everybody around them going to kill them.
I know. Next thing you know, that water rights will be what causes wars. You know it, because I mean you got to have water to be able to maintain to carry supplies up and down, cargo and supplies to you. Either that, or you got to pay out the yin yang toward putting them on an airplane and flying them over there.
Yeah.
Ain't no telling. It'd probably be 3 times higher if you done that. So I mean, water is essential.
Just getting so populated now, you know.
Well, did you keep up with that deal going on right there in Colorado pertaining to Lake Mead?
Oh yeah, I've seen that.
The Colorado River?
Yeah.
Where the Hoover Dam is?
Yeah, they want to pipe it off the Mississippi now. But I don't think that's going to happen.
I don't.
I don't know. I wouldn't put anything past that leadership in Washington right now.
Well, it's either do that or take a chance on having a harsh migration, because if those people out west, Denver, North California, South Carolina, all them places out there, you know, what is that, Nevada, and also Phoenix, Arizona.
They're going to have to put water purification systems in to handle the population, turn salt water into fresh water.
Like they have over there in Israel, right?
Yeah.
In other words, somebody needs to be modifying and making the machines right now, don't they?
Well, it took Israel 15, 20 years to do it, you know.
It did.
But those are some of the most intelligent people over there in the world.
But what I was getting at pertaining to the water, the shortage of the water, Mexico, I didn't realize Mexico City was as big as what it is. They claim they got about 25 million people in Mexico.
Oh, yeah, it's big.
Have you been to Mexico?
I've been to Mexico about 15, 20 times.
You have?
Yeah.
Is it really that congested?
Yeah.
It is.
Like Los Angeles, San Francisco.
Just a lot lower class people.
Not really. There's a lot of money down in Mexico now.
It is.
Yeah. Which every town's got ghettos, you know.
Oh, yeah. How far is the Mexican city from, let's say, Cancun? About another 1,000 miles or something?
No, Mexico City's in the center of Mexico. Cancun's on the Gulf side.
On the east side.
On the Caribbean side of the Gulf down there.
So it'd probably be at least 1,000 miles or better, huh?
Probably 600 or 700 anyway.
Well, I seen where they had a bunch of fires down there in not Portugal, but another place on the west side, going down towards Cuba. What is that? It's a country down there. Pretty nice country.
Well, on the other side of Cuba, you got
No, not Cuba. Going towards Brazil. Be just north of Brazil.
that's in South America.
I know it's in South America, but it's a country by itself, right there on the coast, on the west coast.
We got Panama down there, Brazil, Colombia, Nicaragua.
Well, anyways, they had multiple fires down there, and then I seen another deal on the news. This is all within a week. New Zealand had a deluge that fell out of the freaking sky, that 1,000-year flood, first time they've ever had anything like that. But what I was talking about as far as Mexico, they was on a tier 2 last year because of it getting so dry, to the point that, yeah, you could have water, but you couldn't water your yards. And if they caught you washing your, doing stuff with the water that you're not supposed to be doing, you could get fined for it. They was close enough to their reserves being so low that they was talking about that they would possibly have to go to a tier 3 this year unless they got a lot more moisture. And of course, whenever you got so many people down there drinking out of the same pool, that's what that in and of itself is going to cause the water to diminish. But then if you'll add what's going on with the sun and the weather as far as not raining, but I think there's another factor that they're not telling us about. You know what that factor is? For the past 30 years, we have noticed a significant increase in volcano activity. There's about 45 to 70 volcanoes that's active right now. There's not but like maybe 15 or 20 of them above ground that we know of, but the rest of them are below the oceans.
Yeah.
You know where the Ring of Fire is?
Yeah.
What ocean did you call that?
The Pacific.
The Pacific Ocean? That's down towards South America, isn't it?
Yeah.
The Ring of Fire? Anyways,
We have over 12,000 earthquakes every day in the world.
I don't doubt that neither.
I live at Reelfoot, and we have earthquake every day.
I've been told that.
You can go down there to the museum and you can see it.
You can.
When we have a bad one, I go down to the museum and see how big it was.
Really?
Yeah.
They got a, what do they call it?
It's the thing that records the earthquake. The government put it in down there. Well, all right, brother, I guess I'm going to get on home.
Well, I never told you what I was going to tell you.
What you going to tell me?
That what scientists and your meteorologists ain't telling you is that we're destabilizing our planet by draining so much oil out of the ground. Because if you was to go all the way back to the late 1800s, whenever Ford first created the automobile, compared to where we are right now, we have probably drained enough oil out of the ground to fill up the Grand Canyon all the way to the top, not just to the top of the Hoover Dam, but all the way to the top several times. Well, if you continue to keep doing that year after year after year, guess what?
It just ain't that, too, though. It's all the minerals and everything that is mined on top of all that stuff.
But what I'm saying is that oil...
It's warming the core of the earth.
Yes, the core of the earth. That oil was put there to prevent from that heat escaping.
Well, all those minerals was put there. Everything that we consume, everything that we eat, everything comes from dirt.
We're robbing it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And what we...
That might be what the Lord says it's all going to burn. He
Well,
flooded it the first time. He's
well,
going to burn it this time.
Well, I don't think we're going to have to worry about the Lord doing it. I think we're going to do it to ourselves, don't you?
Well, my life's in His hands. Whatever He decides is fine with me.
Well, you know good and well that our physical lives, I mean, we're all doomed as far as a physical life, because ain't none of us going to live forever.
We all dead. We just don't know the day we're going to die.
Absolutely.
We're already dead.
We're walking dead. We're all walking dead people. We don't even realize it.
We're dead people.
Yep.
We just don't know the day we're going to leave.
That's right. That's right.
What I say. You can live this situation to death. I put my trust in the Lord.
I do too.
And whatever He decides for me, or whatever He decides for me to live through, I'm going to live through it.
Amen.
He calls me home.
Amen.
And I don't worry about all that stuff, because I know the Lord's going to feed me, and He's going to clothe me, and He give me enough sense to know how to shelter myself. And I got food, and I got shelter, and I got clothes. So what else do I need to worry about?
What age are you?
I'm 60.
I'm 61.
Well, we born right right there together then, well.
Yeah, I was born up north, but I was raised up down here in Tennessee since 1967.
Yeah.
But hadn't things got all out of whack pertaining to all these school shootings and now cop killings and all the above? I never would have thought that it had become this evil in my lifetime.
The morals of the American people. When you took the woman and the kids out of the house, that started.
And took...
When Mama stayed home and raised the kids and Daddy worked, that didn't go on. Because on Sunday, you didn't get up and ask if you was going to church. You got to put your church clothes on, and you know you was going to church.
Yeah, but whenever they took discipline out of schools,
well, they took it out of the home first.
Yeah, they took it out of the home first, then they took it out of the schools, and then they took the Bible, basically out of the schools and out of the courthouses to the point that now you can't even have open prayer if you're in school, can you?
Well, I don't.
I mean, I'm sure some schools does, but I mean, if you got somebody in there that's a troublemaker, they're liable to turn you in. Next thing you know, you're having to fight them on the board or something about you. What was it, a football team or something around here locally?
Well, the Lord says we was going to be prosecuted. You know.
But this badly?
Oh, you ain't seen nothing.
But what I'm saying is, sir, we've got major waterways in the world that's either twice as long or sometimes maybe 5 times deeper than the mighty Mississippi at its fullest content, and all of the water structures right now are evaporating and getting low. Well, you know good and well if it was the sun doing that, in which that's where scientists has tried to lead us toward believing.
Well,
if it was the sun doing all that, we wouldn't be able to go outside without getting third-degree burns.
I've asked the Lord about wisdom on nature. And this is what the Lord told me.
But
We've got the same water we always had. The water is still here. It doesn't go anywhere. It makes a cycle from fresh water to salt water to the clouds, and that makes a big cycle all the way around.
But if the earth is getting hotter...
What the problem is, though, the world population has grown so much.
We're consuming it.
So much water, and 40% of what we consume is waste.
Yeah.
The cycle does not have enough time to turn around.
That's part of it.
You understand what I'm saying?
That's part of it. But you know,
the Earth's core is warming because we have robbed all the chemicals and fuels,
minerals,
and dirt and rock,
iron ore.
I mean, coal. The list just goes on and on and on and on and on. It's just not oil causing that. It's a whole bunch of stuff.
But think about this though for a second. If you was to drain all the oil out of your motor, I mean every drop of it, and get in it and go, do you think you could go 100 miles before it locked up?
Well, think about this. If I drained all the water out of your body, how far would you go?
That's the same. It has the same concept to it.
Yeah.
But we're talking about two different matters here. We're talking about oil pertaining to friction, right? Well, whenever you have all those platelets that's moving up, moving down, you got the high tide, the low tide. The earth is basically like a living organism. And whenever you remove all that oil, now you're creating friction. What does friction create? It creates heat.
It just ain't oil. It's the same thing with your body or anything. You know, you take triglycerides medicine. Well, why do you take it? Because you got the wrong stuff in your blood. You put the wrong stuff in, it's made the wrong stuff. You just reverse that. It's pulling all the nutrients out of the earth. Like I said, it's just not oil. It's everything else. If they was just pulling nothing but oil out, it would have very little effect. But they're pulling everything out. All the minerals. All of them.
Well, getting back to what I asked you, do you believe that the Mississippi's going to do it again this year? I do. I really do, because I think it's inevitable that these major water systems are going to start drying up because of seeing it all over the world. It ain't just in one particular spot. It's all over the world. I mean the
It's in your Bible.
the river Euphrates is almost dried up, sir.
I've been to the year of favor. Have you been to the Holy Land?
No, I haven't. I wish that I had.
Well,
Right now, I don't even think I could get a passport and get on an airplane because the feds would be all over me.
that country's been fighting for water for 5,000 years.
Who has?
Israel.
I don't doubt that neither. Because,
Well, I gotta go, brother.
all right, take care of yourself.
All right, take care of yourself.
Good talking to you here.
You too. Quit worrying about stuff. The good Lord gonna take care of it, brother.
That's it. I'll see you now.
All right. Hello. I'm down here watching the sunset.
Watching the sunset. Well, there's another barge that's right in front of me, going in the same direction that that other one was a while ago. And since I was talking to that gentleman, there has been another barge that's gone the opposite direction towards going south, and I can look up the Mississippi River and see another barge that's probably 1.5 to 2 miles away going that way. So it looks to me like the barge traffic is flourishing right now in hauling produce and cargo up and down the river, which is a good thing. It's a good thing. But what's a bad thing is that if this river gets as low as what it did last year, in which there's no reason for me to believe that it won't, the way that the weather has been cycling, eventually it's going to cost an arm and a leg more just to be able to carry the same produce up and down an area of about I guess around 2,500 miles, depending upon from what point it was, and it's just going to be astronomical in how that we're going to have to reassess our self-sustainability and how that we're going to survive pertaining to the masses. And it does say that the river Euphrates is going to dry up in the end times, because it talks about the war of all wars, about the blood's going to get as deep as a horse's bridle. And, you know, that was one of the things that inspired me in the early 90s by me putting out an advisory or a warning, basically a prediction, that the Mississippi River was going to start to go and dry. But it wasn't just the Mississippi River. It was all these watersheds, all these places that's got tributaries in doing things that is a necessity for us to live. I've been telling them all along that what they're doing is wrong, pretending to draining all the nutrients out of the ground. And I don't think so much that the core of the earth is getting no hotter. It was already well over 1,000 degrees, because whenever that volcano fire, brimstone, and everything else that comes out of a volcano, if it's like 1,200 degrees after coming from the center of the earth out to the outer layers of the earth, which is give or take around 3,000 or 4,000 miles, you can only imagine how hot it is at the center of the earth. I was told the other day, I don't know how accurate it is, and I don't know how that they know this. I don't even know what kind of a device or machinery that they use to be able to measure it or go down that deep, but I was told that the center of the earth is basically as hot as the sun, which is 10,000 degrees. 10,000 degrees in the center ball of the earth that Edgar Casey talked about. And that was one of the primary reasons why that it got me looking at some things for the past 2.5, 3 years in regards towards global warming, is that I got to looking at some of the predictions. Casey Jones was from Hopkinsville, Kentucky, and he was considered to be a sleeping prophet. I don't know how they got that, but he was the one that predicted that basically the centrifugal force pertaining to the big ball of fire that's in the center of the earth would change, and by it changing, it would actually throw the poles off, that the poles would reverse. And I don't even know how to explain that, either literally or do it scientifically. I don't know how to explain that towards it making sense. But it's not that the center of the earth is getting any hotter. It's that the earth's heat is now escaping through all these volcanoes, especially the ones down in the ocean. And we're basically, it's just like taking a pot of water and putting it on a stove and turning the eye up real high and watching it boil. You can either turn it halfway high and boil the water out fairly slowly, or you can turn the water all the way up to the point that the pan starts the molecules in the water starts moving around that much more quicker. And by doing so, you're going to cause the pan to go drier that much quicker. Between the consumption of mankind, with it being so many people on the planet, and because of us disturbing the molecule form or the ecosystem that's below our feet that God originally put there, between the both, God foreseen what we was going to be doing, looking at it futuristically thousands of years ago, because he never would have put that in the Bible in regards towards the Euphrates River drying up. And you know good and well, if whatever's going to cause the river Euphrates to dry up, it's going to cause all the rest of these water systems to start drying up too as well. But if God put that in the Bible that the river Euphrates was going to dry up, you have to ask yourself the question, well, how come? What's going to cause it to dry up? Well, the inhabitants here upon the earth. And it talks about that in the Bible. It says, woe be unto the inhabitants whenever you shall start to see these things start to materialize in the last days, pertaining to the opening of the seals. And then it goes from the seals to the trumpets, and it goes from something else. It's like 3 different stages that it goes to before it actually gets to the worst of the worst. But I'm just afraid, by everybody and nobody that thought that I was either a whack job, or thought that I was out of my mind, or thought that I was some sort of a bad person, a monster of some sort. I'm just afraid that these poor people that's going to be left here after I'm dead and gone, they're going to have to go through a great deal of unnecessary suffering, to the degree that if the church world would have gotten behind the ministry of the Windmill Ministries missions, I truly believe that, first of all, we would have been able to have gotten over all these hurdles. We would have already diverted over into other energy sources. And whenever they talk on the news that we're basically in an energy crisis right now, we really are, because of so many people on the planet. And now it's starting to catch up in some of the forecasting that people like Al Gore has been talking about, and scientists have been talking about. And now it's like revved up. And it seems to me like ever since COVID has come into existence for the past 2.5, 3 years, that everything has accelerated. People's bad health has accelerated. People looking at our governments towards what they're doing or what they're not doing has accelerated. Accountability issues is now being looked at in a different way towards accelerating. The water evaporating from major tributaries all over the world is accelerating. So you have to ask yourself the question, what is causing it? Well, God said that we was going to be causing it. And the reason why he said that was because he would come back to destroy humanity because of the way that humanity was destroying the planet. And if we would have had our watchdogs out, and if we would have been paying attention to the same things that the scientists like Al Gore and other people was paying attention to 25, 30 years ago, and if they'd have supported the founder of the Windmill Ministries in bringing forth a spiritual awakening that would adjust towards all these challenges, I truly believe that right now we would be in the middle of a great, great spiritual awakening. All the gun violence wouldn't be current. All the other problems would not be current, because God would have brought a healing up into the land and a healing up into our planet. But once more, certain people didn't want that. And I ain't just talking about one or two people. I ain't just talking about a few dozen people or even a few hundred people. I'm talking about a few thousand people. Know about the experiences that I've been telling people about again and again and again since 1988. And even since 1983, whenever the two hands miraculously come out of heaven that helped to save my life. So you go back 40 years, we could have done a world of good for all the above. But the church world didn't want to do that. They didn't want some idiot like me telling them what to do or what not to do. They didn't want me ruling them. They wanted to rule themselves. So, okay, you want to be self-governed? All right, go ahead. Do your thing. Well, in the meantime, now they're realizing, oh my God, it didn't work, did it? Us self-governing ourselves has basically thrown us off into a state of doomsday. Kind of like walking off into the mouth of the volcano. And they're just now starting to realize this, and they're just now putting a great deal of interest and money and investment in other energy resources that so many people has been blinded on account of. And you know who blinded them? Other than greed and stupidity? The Luciferian Lucifer. He was deliberately wanting to lead or drive humanity off into a self-doomsday estate. Kind of like committing suicide. And because we had so many doubters or deniers, it has really, really put us in a very, very precarious, horrifying, uncomfortable position, especially whenever we start having to either truck, consumer goods that we used to be able to use the Mississippi or the current of the Mississippi for our benefits towards, hauling stuff either up or down the Mississippi. Whenever it gets to the point that we can't do that, then we're going to have to alternate over into some other method of being able to still transport them goods from A to B. Because a lot of this stuff that goes down the Mississippi River right here, it just don't end down at the Gulf over by New Orleans. It's liable to go another 4,000 or 5,000 miles somewhere, or maybe even 6,000 or 7,000 miles somewhere, depending upon who the bidder is and what they was wanting at the time. They still take a great deal of coal out of this country. They don't burn near as much coal as what we used to burn back in the 18 and the 1900s. But whenever it comes to them taking minerals and deposits out of the ground and selling them, that's probably a number one leading industry other than oil itself, crude oil. That, natural gas, and other types of gases that they get from various parts of the country. And to me, even though the Earth is a big, 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 big planet, we're consuming so much. I think the reason why that we're constantly having, what did gentleman say? Something like 2,000 earthquakes a day on the planet. Of course, most of them I'm sure they're just like tremors, but the Earth is basically consuming itself. It's shrinking. Kind of like taking air out of a balloon. Because whenever you're constantly using up all the minerals and the resources that's in the Earth, eventually you're going to start having major effects. And the earth, we know that the earth is not a solid piece of rock like at one time they believed. We know that the earth is round instead of flat. At one time they believed that if you got on a boat that you would fall off the ocean somewhere. We have learned and we've growed, but we have growed and learned slowly compared to the way that we should have learned going back 30-something years ago, whenever there should have been an awakening, a revival. They didn't want that. They didn't want a revival. Like I said, they didn't want somebody like me telling them what to do. They wanted to do their own thing pertaining to the adults and the baby boomers. Basically, there was a total rejection of the opening of the first seal. It was totally rejected to the point that they caused havoc in my life towards trying to destroy my life. In other words, they didn't like the message coming from the messenger, and because they were so idiotic, they thought that if they destroyed the messenger, that they would destroy not only the message, but the concept of the message of what the messenger was talking about. And you know what? I'm not in control of those things. I can't control when it rains or how much it's going to rain or when it don't rain. The only thing that I can do is basically be a spokesman for the Heavenly Father. And that's according to any ministry or any preacher or any theologian that studies a lot and prays a lot, believes in God, that we don't have control over various things. The only thing that we have control over is preparing ourselves to get ready for those things. And of course, whenever you put yourself in a position, let's say Noah, that was preaching to everybody about the earth going to be destroyed because of the wickedness in the earth, Noah didn't cause the flood. Noah was only trying to help the people in preparing themselves because of the flood, that if they would have quit sinning and living in that type of a state that they was living in, that event could have actually been prevented. But because it had done already cycled and reached the point that the point of no return, God brought punishment to them. And the way he brought punishment to them was bringing all the water. Well, now the earth is heating up. And now the water's evaporating. So whenever it talks about in the Bible how that God will come back to destroy those who are destroying the planet, I've had people tell me that mankind cannot destroy the planet. We cannot destroy the planet. And maybe we can't destroy it per se all at one time, immediately, instantaneously, towards it basically either imploding or exploding. But if you gnaw on this thing and work on it year after year after year, towards all the people that's stealing from the Mother Nature, whenever you do this year after year after year, eventually those little bites turn into big bites. And those big bites turn into even bigger bites, because now, instead of us having 2 billion people on the planet, or 4 billion people on the planet, now we got something like 6.7 billion people on the planet, and they're saying that within the next 10 years from now, the way that we're going, we're going to jump from 7 billion to on up to about 10 billion, or maybe even more. So, all this stuff, all these mouths, all these needs are going to have the same type of nutrients that everybody else had. And whenever you got twice as many people drinking from the same pool, the pool is going to eliminate itself. The more the H2O, the water in the pool is going to diminish twice as fast, because now you got twice as many people drinking out of the same pool. And whenever I say that, I'm talking about Mexico, 25 million people in that one town. I'm talking about Lake Mead, pertaining to the Colorado River, where the Hoover Dam is. Whenever you have such of an explosion of population, naturally, you're going to drain the resources that much quicker. That's what gets me irritated. It's not that I dislike Mexicans. It's not that I don't want Mexicans to better their lives, because I do. But what irritates me is that so many illegal Mexicans are coming over here because obviously their resources down there must be dwindling, or it's the drug lords or something that's driving them out of that area because they don't want to no longer live there. And now they're coming up here. And I don't mind them coming up here if they come up here legally, but if they're going to come up here like a bunch of bandits, now they're taking away not only my resources, but they're taking away my resources pertaining to my son and his children and his children's children. And it ain't fair. It ain't fair because we, the people, have taken our eye off the ball. And because we have let this go as long as it has, now we're having to do catch-up time towards backpedaling. And I just don't know if we're going to be smart enough or if we're going to work hard enough to be able to regain the imbalances to where we can be a self-sustainable planet like we was at one time, whenever we thought that we could just keep draining and draining and draining the oil, and the oil would always be there indefinitely. The oil ain't going to be there indefinitely. And we are seeing major repercussions because of what we're doing to the planet. And I think it's got to do with the heat shield. I think it's also got to do with oil being a deposit or a mineral in the ground that helps prevent it helps to eliminate the friction. And whenever you have the friction in the ground, in the earth, that's steadily even getting higher, the higher the friction, the more the heat. And that's also a contributing factor towards what's going on above our heads pertaining to the atmosphere warming up hotter. The atmosphere gets hotter. More moisture goes up into the atmosphere because the atmosphere has gotten hotter. Now, the atmosphere is basically not operating normally to the degree that, like last year over in Pakistan, it flooded like 10 million people. I don't know how many people it killed, but they got flooded in areas like they have never, ever begun to even remotely conceive. And there's been all kinds of other floodings, not just here in America, but throughout other areas. It's like pockets. Like I said, whenever all that moisture builds up and it goes higher because the heat is hotter, whenever it does release it, it don't release it in a normal, natural way of what we have been accustomed to going back, 20, 25, 30, 40, 50 years ago. The weather becomes irregular, erratical, because of the imbalances. And whenever you start seeing tornadoes after tornadoes after tornadoes, or drought after drought after drought, or water deluges after deluges towards people dying because of mighty masses of water coming out of nowhere, you can now start to say we're living pacifically, not metaphorically, but pacifically in the last days, because the Bible says that in the last days we would encounter and see these things coming about. The Bible calls them great sorrows. Humongous, horrendous, big sorrows. Woe be unto the inhabitants hereupon to the planet. Why did God tell us that? Because God loves us, and God was trying to prevent the inedible from happening that it looks like now, because of this resistances that has went on 30 plus years, that has put everybody back in the back seat. I just don't know if we can backpedal towards catching up, doing a catch-up deal. I think we ought to try. I think we ought to try tremendously, but there's no guarantees that 10 years from now, instead of the earth warming up, the earth will either moderate or the earth will start to cool back down. There's no guarantees, no matter what we do at this point, of changing that. Now, we can slow it down. There's no doubt that all this awareness just within the past 2 years since COVID has hit like I said, it was kind of like taking a gas pedal and accelerating it, that now we have been beginning to start looking at things differently pertaining to the world warming up and the causes of it warming up. The causes of the atmosphere warming up. The causes of the earth itself warming up. Like I told that gentleman a while ago, if the sun was doing this, and the sun alone doing this, we wouldn't be able to walk outside without getting second, third. And I don't even know if you can get 4th degree burns, but I'm pretty sure that probably 4th degree burns is possible. There probably ain't nothing left pertaining to the flesh at a 4th degree burn. You're probably down to the bare bone at a 4th degree burn. But we would be getting all kinds of bad skin diseases and cancer and burns. In other words, the world would basically become uninhabitable to work out in the sun because the sun would be so hot. Well, that's not happening. But yet, no, the planet's warming up. So how and why is the planet warming up? It's warming up from the inside out. And just as I said back last year, whenever all this was going on with the mighty Mississippi, that it's even going to be worse next year. And the year after that, it's going to be dry and hot and horrible to witness and to experience. And I'm not saying that we can't reverse it, but to think that we're going to do it all on our own, it ain't going to happen. It's going to take the Heavenly Father. It's going to take that supernatural entity to intervene, to be able to stop the heat from getting so hot and stop the atmosphere from to getting so hot. And we don't have tools. We don't have technology to do that. We got technology to know how to destroy it, but we don't have technology to know how to build it back other than to slow it down. Yes, we can slow the inedible down to a certain degree once we all get on board and start fighting for the same thing and start doing the same thing in regards towards global warming, towards draining all the natural resources out of the ground pertaining to crude oil and gas and natural gas and all this other stuff. We can slow it down, but I think that it's already got to the point that right now the inedible's still going to happen. In other words, it's going to get worse. And the next year after that, it's going to get worse. And the next year after that, it's going to get worse. And if we don't start preparing for that, then we're a bunch of I guess, like Hillary Clinton says, we're a bunch of deplorables because we become unteachable at that point in time, to the point that don't nobody think that this stuff is real. That's one of the things that's got us into trouble that we've gotten in, and that's the reason why I blame Lucifer of his powers towards blinding everybody up until just basically the past year or two, in people starting to take a great deal of interest in what's going on our planet. We're starting to see a radicalness. 2 days ago, the high was 30 here. Today, it got up in the 60s. What ice and snow was on the ground, it's all gone. And, we think that, we went through a bad freeze. We went through a bad freeze. Whenever you got temperatures that's hovering somewhere around 30 degrees, and at night it may drop down to, let's say, 20 degrees at the very lowest, your ground is not going to freeze that deep. It may freeze 3 or 4 inches, but if it's not that cold, and if it don't stay that cold for a certain length of time, your ground is not going to freeze like we used to see it freeze. Whenever I was growing up in Tennessee, it was a practice with putting down pipe that you had to go at least a foot, and in some cases they actually recommend 18 inches. Go from 12 inches, go another 4 inches deep in the ground. That way you hadn't got to worry about your pipes freezing in the wintertime. Because back 50, 60 years ago, just right here in Tennessee, the ground would get frozen along about November, and in some cases it would stay frozen all the way up until probably late March or early April. We don't no longer see winters like that in Tennessee. Now, they still have winters like that, I'm pretty sure, up in Montana, Minnesota, Wyoming, your northern states, that's connected with Canada. I'm pretty sure that they still have that. But even at that, we are still noticing significant differences in how that the permafrost today is melting in places like Alaska and places in Russia and places in Canada. We're seeing the permafrost start to melt, which is causing houses, the foundations of houses to crumble, bridges to crumble, roads to crumble, because now you're taking everything out of its normalcy and compared to the way it used to be to what's going on today. So whenever people tell you that global warming is not real, they are so full of it that they can't even see the trees for the forest. And people like myself and Al Gore and other people has been trying to warn these people and give out advisories again and again and again. And because I don't guess that they are in tune with Mother Nature like most of your Native American people are, the next thing you know, we let this catch up to us blindsidedly, and now we're having to work twice as hard and think of things twice as much just to be able to save ourselves. I never would have thought that I would have had to come up with the ideal towards policing that most of the people in America has lost faith in our state and federal system, and the only other alternative that I know of to put the balance of trust back into the system is to allow something else to govern that system, which I proposed: insurance companies. Insurance companies is basically in control of everything else to begin with. I mean, if they have a major uproar in a town and they burn half the city down, who's going to pay the bill for it? Insurance companies. And of course, if it's something big major, like a hurricane, usually then they call up on a big brother, and who pays the bill then? We do. We, the people, pay that bill because it gets tagged on to the rest of the bill. And if you continue to do that year after year after year, all these little hits turn into big hits. And America may be a very, very strong country economically, but it can't take this forever. And every time, a Mexican comes over here illegally, that's draining the resources, that's another hit. Every time there's a bad storm, that's another hit. Every time there's a drought, that's a hit. Every time there's a flood and it kills a lot of people, that's a hit. Every time there's a tornado that comes out of the sky and stays on the ground for 150 miles or whatever and tears up, community after community after community, that is a hit. That's draining the resources. In addition to what we're doing by having so many people on the planet. Population explosion. Basically since World War II. Well, I'm going to leave it at that. Looks like it's done got pretty well dark out here in regards towards cooling off a little bit. Like I said, I'm at the mighty Mississippi here at Tiptonville by Reelfoot Lake. This time last year, the river was lower than what I'd ever seen it. There's another barge right down there. And the gentleman that I was talking to said about a month ago that the water was actually higher than what it is now, which I don't doubt it, because the Mississippi River, it fluctuates from month to month, from year to year. It fluctuates tremendously. But last year, you could literally see land almost until about halfway of the river, and you can't see it now with it being so dark. But the river's from here to the bank over there is probably about a mile wide. It don't look like it because it's an optical illusion, but it's probably about a mile wide. Some places of the Mississippi is even wider. Some places in the Mississippi ain't near that wide. Like I say, it changes. It fluctuates from year to year, from season to season. But what we're doing to the planet, it's going to be fluctuating, but it's going to be fluctuating towards it getting worse and worse every year. Drier and drier, hotter and hotter every year. That's the direction that we're going in right now. Which, once more, there had to be a practical reason why that God spoke in the book of Revelations towards not only the river Euphrates drying up, but how that he would come back and destroy those who are destroying the planet. That's the reason why God sends prophets. That's the reason why God sends messengers. That's the reason why God sends people along that, yeah, they may be a bit different. They may not be the same old, but there's a reason why that these people are trying to help humanity and not hurt humanity. But now they tried everything in the world to put me in the category that I was either crazy, started out toward me being crazy, mentally incompetent, and then it went from me being mentally incompetent to the point that I was now a monster, to the degree that now I wanted to do bodily harm to everybody. I wanted to blow up dams. I wanted to assassinate presidents. I wanted to blow up memorial buildings down in Oklahoma City, even though they'd already went through what they went through in 1995 protecting Timothy McVeigh. In other words, they were steadily trying to destroy me. Character assassination. And you know, a lot of people, whenever they get a hold of this, including my son will say, I didn't want to destroy my dad. I ain't never done nothing bad to my dad. Which, you know, in a sense, that's right. He never has. But it's not so much what you're doing that hurts Dad, but it is what you haven't been doing. As far as communicating with Dad and maybe telling Dad, hey Dad, I'm making some pretty decent money. If things don't work out and you get a little low on money, give me a holler. He's never offered to do that. After he got on his 2 feet, after I helped him out, after I helped him buy basically a $80,000 truck, after I gave him some money to be able to go out to Denver, Colorado and get hooked up with a bigger company, he's never one time offered, if you need any money, Dad, let me know. And to me, at his age, because he can still chase the cheese and I can't. I'm disabled. To me, for a son or a daughter to not care about their parents that way, but yet now he wants to look at me and point his finger at me and call me a deadbeat dad because I'd fallen off of a building and I was trying to regroup, trying to get back on my feet, and it took me about 3 or 4 years to get back on my feet. But then eventually I got to working and I got things back going in tune with my life, and I got to paying child support like I should, etc. And I always picked him up and took care of him. I always tried to involve him into my life. For him to point his finger at me and tell me how rotten and no good and sorry that I am, pertaining to me being a parent, in which I was a bad parent. I wasn't a good parent. But I wasn't a monster parent. I involved him in my life. I took him places. We went down to Memphis about once a month, sometimes 2 or 3 times a month. We went on vacations and took him to places. Ozark Mountains, Disney World, etc. Took him with me on the first crusade up into New York City and Washington, D.C. So it ain't like that he hasn't had the opportunity of getting to know his dad. But you know what? He'll be the one to live with that. And after I'm dead and gone, he'll probably go through this remorse thing, or maybe not. I don't know. It just depends on if he's even got a conscience any longer or not. But I regret a lot of things that I didn't get to do with my dad. There was a lot of things that I done with my dad that I appreciate doing with my dad. We went fishing, we went hunting, we went water skiing. We done things on the farm together. There was times that I sat and listened to him play guitar and sang and basically be enchanting. There was lots of good times, but there was lots of bad times. But you know what? That's life. Life comes with good and bad. There's a reason why that our ancestors made a vow to death do us part, for better or worse. that once they made that commitment, they knew that it was just as prone for somebody to get sick or an accident to happen or whatever to happen to that commitment, that same status flow that you was agreeing upon at that particular time may not be the same status flow 2 years from now, 6 months from now, or 10 years from now. But if you really are committed to one another towards making that commitment till death do us part, for better or worse, the old people stuck to their word. Today, those vows don't mean nothing. I mean, you can say them all day long. You can ramble them off and recite them all day long, but if you're not willing to live by them, what good is talking about them? What good is even reciting them if you're not really true to your word? And that's what I'm seeing happening in America. And like I said, one day whenever I'm dead and gone, he's probably going to say, you know what? I wish that I would have done this, or I wish I'd have done that, or I wish, well, after your parents is dead and gone, you can wish in one hand and poo-poo in the other and see which one fills up the quickest. And I just about guarantee it's going to be the hand that you're poo-pooing in. Because wishes are something similar towards good lucks, raindrops that never hit the ground. The wish that you wish somebody for might come true. Then again, it's just as apt towards it not coming true. Because that's the barrier of wishes. Now, faith in God, like I was telling that individual a while ago, that if we don't reach out for the Holy Spirit to be our guided light, they can try to rejuvenate any and everything that they want to in regards towards this this problem with the earth warming up. But if they don't have the blessings of God in their favor, feed this dog. This dog's out here. I don't know whose dog it is. Hey, boy. Hey, boy. Hey. I can't even whistle. Throw him some marshmallows out. He was scavenging a while ago looking for some food. Throw some marshmallows out. Maybe he'll smell them. I'm sure if he's that hungry, he'll eat just about anything. But if we don't have the blessings of the Heavenly Father, you may think that you have the labor force. You may think that you have the technology. You may think that everything's supposed to go a certain way. But if you don't have the blessings of God, you don't have nothing. Oh yeah, you may be able to accomplish towards getting by without God for a certain length of time. But then after that, whenever God's patience gets thin, then God will basically turn his back. And once God turns his back, then you realize that, wow, I really needed him the whole time. He was an asset in my life, wasn't he? Well, yeah. Yeah, God's going to take care of his people. But he's not going to take care of people that aren't real and aren't true and aren't devoted to him. Kind of like if you're not devoted to that vow that you get married under, what good is even saying it if you're not going to live by it? It ain't worth the time of day. Like Jesus said, that if salt has lost its potency, what good is it other than to be trampled down by the foot of man? So if we don't see that revival, we won't see our problems get straightened out. Thanks again for listening. Good luck to each and every one of us. Want to say God bless you. God bless you for your prayers and your time for listening. And want to say God bless America. God bless our troops. And heaven help us all, and good luck to us all towards where we go in the future with our endeavors. God bless and shalom.